Well, a few folks will trickle in, but want to get started, want to make good use of everyone's time here today. So welcome to the Future is Bright with AI webinar. Davenport Group is excited to have you here on this wonderful Thursday to talk a little bit more about Copilot and what the capabilities are, right? AI is a huge word, and it's a little bit scary sometimes, right? But we're here to break it down for you and really walk you through the steps of what you can use at a Copilot level, and kind of go from there and build off of that for your organization. So Kevin, go ahead to the next slide, please. Introducing ourselves, right? My name is Jackson Larson. I'm the account executive here in the North Central Territory. So the Midwestern states, born and raised, love it. Shout out to my customers on the call here. And I saw Jevin jumped in. Remember this for later. Jevin, please schedule a call with me. That'll make sense later. But with us today on the technical side is Kevin Morrison. He's our cloud architect on the Microsoft and application side. So he will be kind of walking through on a technical level what Copilot is, how you can use it, and really go from what is it to how do you implement it. So he can cover that whole process through this webinar. Go ahead, next slide, Kevin. Many of you on the call are familiar with Davenport Group, right? But for those who aren't or need a refresher, want to run through a couple things that may have changed or been updated since the last time we've had kind of a briefing on who Davenport Group is, right? So we're a Microsoft Solutions partner, Dell Titanium partner, and VMware principal partner. And I want to shout out my marketing team here real quick. They do a wonderful job putting webinars like this together, making sure the account executives have great customer events for all of you in territory in person. And they were actually awarded Partner of the Year for Marketing from Dell Technologies this year in 2024. So huge kudos to the marketing team for all the work they put in into webinars and setting up awesome events for Davenport Group and our customers. Now, moving on to kind of who Davenport Group is, right? How do we utilize the Microsoft partnership? How do we utilize Dell Technologies? We're a fully solution-focused organization, right? We want to make sure that the solution that we're putting in front of you and putting in your data center or your environment is truly going to work for you in the best, highest capacity. So whether that be hyperconverged infrastructure, data protection, storage, all the way down to AI, whether it be Copilot like we're going to talk about today, or a Gen AI project. We're uniquely positioned with these partnerships to achieve that goal, and we have the experience to back it up for all-inclusive services and engineers to make sure that it all works and fits together the first time and the right time. Speaking of the engineers, I want to turn it over to Kevin Morrison. But before I do, I want to encourage everyone, if you have any questions, come off mute, put it in the chat. I'll be monitoring and making sure that those questions get up to Kevin if he doesn't answer them through the presentation. But I want to pass it over to Kevin to kind of start this idea of what Copilot is, lay a foundation, and then jump into some demos and really give you a high-touch experience of what you can do with the platform. So Kevin, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jackson. As Jackson said, just to reintroduce myself, I am Kevin Morrison, cloud architect here at Davenport Group, and work on the Microsoft and applications team, wherein I do work from anything Microsoft that's on-prem all the way into the cloud, and anything in between with hybridization. So today we're here to talk about Copilot for Microsoft 365 in particular. And I think the natural question that I'm sure everybody kind of is here that kind of already knows is, what is Copilot for Microsoft 365? What does that actually mean? Well, Copilot for 365 is effectively a smart assistant powered by real-time intelligence. And what fuels that and makes that possible is a natural language large language model, LLM. So what is a large language model? Well, basically, it is a model of decision trees and being able to understand vast data sets. So a lot of what we're dealing with today with large language models, there are dozens out there. The one that's most famous that you're probably familiar with is ChatGPT, which in fact uses their GPT 3.5 or GPT-4 or GPT-4 Turbo engines as their models. Copilot for 365 uses the large language model of GPT 4.0 and 4.0 Turbo, depending on which app you're using it in. I don't remember which one is applicable, but I know Turbo has capabilities beyond 4.0, including photo and potentially some video capabilities. So how does Copilot for 365 work? Well, it utilizes this natural language large language model, the LLM from GPT, to review and go through a vast data set for your Microsoft tenant. And where does Microsoft get access to that data? Well, it's pulling all your data into what Microsoft has termed Microsoft Graph. Microsoft Graph has access to all the data in SharePoint Online, OneDrive. It has access to Outlook and Excel and anything that lives within the Microsoft cloud. Microsoft Graph is able to see that data. And Microsoft Graph has capabilities of even being able to see inside of SQL datasets that you are either running natively under Microsoft Cloud, or they have the ability to mirror in real time data from external database providers, say on AWS, into Azure, where Microsoft Graph has access to it, which would allow your users the ability to query live data about customer data or projects, whatever it is, manufacturing, and being able to use Copilot to intelligently ask questions and also get intelligent answers back. Now, that has to be enabled for a third-party data set through some additional hooks that we're not really going to talk about today, but Copilot is a pretty wide suite of tools. So we have Copilot for Microsoft 365, which is for the Microsoft 365 productivity apps like Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, Word, etc., Teams, like we're on right now. But then there's Copilot Studio, which allows you to create what used to be called Power Automate chatbots that you can integrate either directly into Teams for your internal organization, or you can have it on a website and have integrations and hooks into there. Copilot is also available for Dynamics 365. There's a Copilot in the Azure portal now, and Copilot for security, though that has a very steep barrier to entry. I think it's at $30,000 a month to use that. I may have that number wrong, but it was very, very steep to get started with it. But that's a very useful tool that we're not really going to talk about, but just to state that Copilot as a whole is a platform of different native language tools to integrate into the Microsoft Cloud. So, what can it do? Copilot for Microsoft 365 in general is what we're talking about. Enables users to enhance their creativity, their productivity. They can skill up using Copilot for 365 in the various apps and to be more efficient. I think Copilot for 365, one of its main drivers is efficiency for your users. They're allowed to get more done in the same amount of time by not needing to come up with a skeleton or framework of what they want to do whole cloth. They can just intelligently type into a chat box for Copilot what they want to accomplish, and Copilot will actually give them something as a good starting point for building off of. So we're going to move on here and talk about Copilot and Outlook. Outlook is something that I'm pretty sure every one of us uses on a day-to-day basis, because if you're here, you're probably interested in Copilot 365 and already use Outlook either for Exchange Online or Exchange On-Prem. Copilot and Outlook is only going to be integrated to Exchange Online. As long as you have a hybrid from on-prem into Exchange Online, you'll be able to utilize a lot of these features, or you'll be able to utilize all these features. But what can I do? Well, Copilot and Outlook allows you to really understand what's in your inbox. You can open up the Copilot app that's in the new the new Outlook app, because you have Classic, which you've all been used to using for the last several years, and there's a new one that just dropped this year that is basically what feels like a desktop version of the web UI, but it has the ability to pop open a Copilot chat entry, and you can ask it, hey, what have I missed for the last week? Are there any important emails that I've missed? Or do I have any action items that I need to respond to? And it'll go through all of your inbox to find stuff. You can even ask it, do I have any, what's on my agenda for today? What meetings do I have coming up? And which one of them am I going to be a presenter on? Which one of those do I have to take notes on, and it'll do a fairly good job at being able to tell you what's coming up, what you're doing, and what to prepare for. One of the other things that Outlook for Copilot and Outlook has as a capability is what Microsoft is calling Copilot Compose, which is effectively the Copilot feature that allows it to take in input in terms of natural language of, I want to write an email that says, I want marketing to tell me how much our net profits were in Q3 of last year. And it will generate a professional looking email and allow you to reformat it and edit it and tweak it depending on how you want. You can tell it to change some of its own tone from more professional to more friendly. You can make it sound more empathetic is an option that is also a possibility within Copilot Compose. So Copilot in Outlook has a lot of features, and I kind of wanted to showcase a little bit of what that might look like. So we're going to do just a little bit of a demo here, and I'm going to share the demo. 1 second, please.
While you're pulling that up, Kevin, I'm curious for the folks that are on the call, who, by a show of, in the chat, who's using the new Microsoft Outlook app that Kevin mentioned versus the classic? I'm always curious on that kind of breakdown of who switched to the newest and latest and who's still kind of holding on to that original version. So feel free to put that in the chat. Looks like Guy is using the new version, classic. I'm still in classic personally. I'm clinging on to that for a couple more months, but
yeah, me too.
I use new Outlook. My chat is not working, by the way.
It's not, huh?
Yeah, mine isn't either. It says chat is only available during the meeting.
I hate Teams.
Ironic. I love it. It's just
sometimes
it's not always good.
Yeah, there's some quirks, some things I still are ironing out 7 years later, but it usually hits the mark of 98% of the time. So Jackson, you can confirm you can see the demo on the show? Okay, great.
I see your desktop right now, not the...
Fantastic. So this is a demo environment. So we have an inbox from somebody using the new Outlook app. The way it looks kind of like the new web UI, just reskinned on a desktop. And we see that Lee here is looking at an email that he's gotten where it's talking about there being a discrepancy in income and expenses for last quarter that he put in. And we're going to see what Copilot can give us as an option for drafting a response. So you'll see that down here we had Grady's email, and then if we hit reply, we get the new compose, and then we have draft with Copilot, which is the Copilot composed feature set. So we have these different options here of apologize and confirm review, ask for clarification and delay, etc. We're going to choose apologize and see what it comes up with. And it will generate all this response based on context from the previous email or even in an entire chain. And it has Lee apologizing and talking about how to set up a meeting to to figure out how to fix this. So we're going to say, yeah, let's actually keep this email and send it on to Grady. And then that's off going to Grady as his response. He didn't have to type anything. You don't have to come up with anything in terms of content. It analyzes what was being asked of it and gives you a good response, a professional email. So that's can be really handy, a good time saver. I always recommend, and so does Microsoft, you always analyze the content to make sure it makes sense. Always read it, don't just blindly accept it. But it has frequently, for me, been a time saver in getting an email started in case I wasn't sure how to best respond. So we're also going to look here at terms of what Outlook's Copilot can do for summarizing an email thread. So this has 5 different emails in a thread. And at the top here, you're going to have summary by Copilot. And if we click that, it's going to look through the email and try and find key points and generate a summary for you. And here we have 4 different people and what they said Christy's talking about the recall. Miriam's talking about how long does it take to receive parts, and Christy responded. So we have a bunch of information. One of the things that I think is really neat about this, though, in the summary is it has these little footnotes where it'll take you to where you could actually see where the contents of that summary bullet point came from. And it came from this email by Christy. That's all we're going to kind of go through for right now with an Outlook Copilot demo. So let me get us back over to the presentation.
And while we're switching back, I want to open it up. Does anyone have any questions on the Outlook piece of Copilot that we can run over here quick?
At one point, Jackson, this is Tony, there was empathy that was, you can add or change, how that is. Is that actually built into that portion in Outlook as well?
Yes. Yes, it is. There's
Cool.
There's an area in when you have your response, they'll have custom options where you can choose a little drop down of tone, and they'll have more polite, formal, professional, more friendly, empathy. I think empathy might be not exactly that word, but there's a tone you can ask for that will make it a more empathetic email. And if it
Perfect.
doesn't, you can always ask it to as well and just say, I want to respond this way, make the response empathetic or heartwarming or very convincing or have a strongly worded summary. And it'll do a great job of creating that for you.
Thanks, Kevin.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Kevin, just personally, I get a lot of emails, and I think a lot of our customers, a lot of people here do. With that kind of summarized bit, can you summarize over the entire inbox, or is it just limited to a specific thread?
You can summarize the whole inbox.
Okay.
It'll be able to, you could say, hey, find me every email that I wrote to Jackson and about this specific topic or along this specific subtopic, and it will be able to go and in general pull out those references for you. So you can find it. And also, just as we said, summarize the entire inbox. What have I missed in the last 2 days? Give me a summary of everything that happened last week, and it will give you that feedback.
Awesome. I'll be using that going forward.
Okay. All right. Next thing we're going to talk about is Copilot for Word. Everybody mostly uses Microsoft Word. We've all got documents we have to look at or create or at least edit. And Word uses Copilot Compose and has the ability to create whole cloth entire documents. You can even have it reference existing files that live on either, I'm just going to say they live in OneDrive Online, but as really SharePoint Online and OneDrive kind of all the same backend. As long as the document lives inside your SharePoint Online tenant or in your OneDrive and you have access to it as the user, you can use it as a reference document to create another document off of. For example, if we have a 100-page document about an instruction manual for an electric bike, you can have it reference that document saying, okay, here's this document. Give me troubleshooting steps. Give me a document on how to repair these three things that are outlined in that 100-page document, and it will pull out all the actual information, and then you can have it generate a summary or bullet points, and you can just massage whatever it writes using Copilot in Word.
What type of formatting does that accept? It doesn't accept like PDFs, would it, or is it just like Word documents?
Word documents for now.
Okay.
For now, it's just referencing the same document type. But I will say we're going to talk about PowerPoint in just a few slides. It can reference Word documents, but it will, and Excel sheets, but it will not reference PDFs. I'm not going to showcase a demo for Word because what it does pretty well, but it's not flashy, and it's something that is pretty self-explanatory. So the one that we did want to show you another demo of is Well, actually, before I move to Excel, does anybody have any other questions about Copilot for Word?
Hey, Kevin, for me, when I draft a document and think it back to even my college days, with the idea of a summary, can it kind of propose an executive summary or kind of summarize that into bullet points so I can give that to a leader?
Absolutely. In fact, I recently have used Copilot for Word myself to, I pointed it at a folder of files of Word documents and asked it to generate a summary of all the documentation and as basically an executive summary that I could hand off for a particular audience. And it was able to summarize and change the tone and make it more executive friendly, right? They don't want to, a lot of executives don't want to read paragraphs and paragraphs. They want the bullet points. Give me the easy snippets. I've also used Copilot in Word for generating entire process documents from, for one example, with Azure Stack HCI, I used it to give me a skeleton for the best way to do day one management and operations for an Azure Stack HCI cluster. And it gave me a 12-page document with no images, just pure text, but it gave me bullet points where it was needed. It gave me numbered lists. It gave me footnotes and everything else that I felt was very useful. I reviewed the content, made sure I made some tweaks and added some screenshots to make it more palatable in terms of it just being raw text. And it was a well fleshed out document that saved me probably at least 2-3 hours from not having to go and pull all that data myself and or just to create a whole cloth for my head. So I've used Copilot in Word a few times just to save myself hours of time.
That's awesome.
All right, I'm going to move on to Excel. Excel, spreadsheets galore. I work in Excel. I'm not a power user by any stretch of the imagination. I use it to analyze data, usually when I'm pulling out CSVs from PowerShell, when I'm doing some of my systems engineering work. But, there's plenty of other employee types and job positions and job roles that utilize it: accounting, finance, marketing, HR. Almost everybody in the organization probably interacts with Excel at some point or another. And there is Copilot for Excel. It can help analyze the data that exists in a table, and it can give you insights that it has found based on the data, and even create charts and visuals for the data that you presented to it. And we're going to see how that looks here in a second.
And while Kevin's bringing that up, another little question I want some response in the chat for. What would a little self-analysis? What would you consider yourself as a Microsoft Excel user? Entry level, advanced, expert? Did you write the code for Excel? Just kind of little fun, little banter in the chat here. And I can see your screen, Kevin.
Okay, good. Any banter incoming, or should I just okay, so we see some advanced, some experts. Ooh, even some VBA. Excellent.
Ooh.
I don't know that Copilot itself will do VBA script for you in Excel. If you have GitHub Copilot, it absolutely will create VBA scripts for you. So I also love GitHub Copilot. It's fantastic for writing up PowerShell scripts. You just have to, and other small programs. It just has this tendency to hallucinate and tell you that modules exist when they don't. So you just have to be on your toes. All right, so this is, we're going to look at Excel. So we're going to open up an Excel spreadsheet here. This is for an electric bike sales and marketing file. And what we have is a bunch of data, and it's already pre-formatted into a table. Copilot for Excel requires the data to be in a table already, a table object. So, I mean, that's fairly simple. If you know how to use Excel, select all your data and then convert to table. You can format its table easily right there. You would include your headers, and then you'll get your little filters across the column the row of columns. And once you have that, you can use Copilot to actually start looking at your data. So we're going to open up Copilot. And let's see, we are going to have it organize it by best-selling bikes. So it will now have just analyzed the data to understand what the best-selling was. Terms of just year-to-date quantity sold is what it was able to evaluate with no prior knowledge, with the context of the data. And so it sorted by year-to-date quantity, and we can do a couple of different things with this data. And in Copilot, for 365, almost all these apps, when you have this little pop-out sidebar for Copilot, will have this little book icon that is effectively a prompt book that you can use to see what suggestions it might have. So we're going to edit this, and we're going to apply a scale to that column, sorry. So it's going to do a red, yellow, green color scale using conditional formatting. And I will profess I am not the best at setting up conditional formatting, but right here it does it for us. Instantly creates it and gives us this nice little color gradient, nice visual representation. So now we're going to create a pivot table and take a look at the relationship between the category of bike, the type of bike, and how well they're being sold. And then it's creating us a pivot table here that we can then add to a new sheet. And here we go. It adds it as a pivot table and even gives us a nice little chart. We can say, go back to table, take us back to where we were. And we're going to create a scatter plot of price to year to date. And here we see where it creates our scatter plot here, and we will add this to the sheet. And here we go. Some nice, useful visuals for easy digestion of the actual data. And this is some of the stuff that Copilot for Excel can do. And as always, Microsoft is continuing to develop new capabilities for any of the productivity apps to have Copilot do more inside of it. That is the end of our Excel demo here. Any questions?
Hey, Kevin, I have one in the chat from Guy. When you're talking about VBAs, was it Copilot with GitHub?
So yes. Microsoft purchased GitHub a few years ago, and now they have a Copilot for GitHub. And it is a natural language prompt that you can use either in GitHub code spaces, or you can integrate into a bunch of different IDEs. I prefer to use VS Code, and you can just tell it to both, hey, I want to write a program that does this in this programming language, and it'll take a moment, and it'll spit out something that it believes it will accomplish what you asked it to do. And if it's not super complex, it will give it to you exactly the way you need it to be. If it is a little more complex, that's when all AIs tend to do what's called an AI hallucination, where they make things up that you want to hear. And you have to be a little more wary of that. But yes, GitHub Copilot is for programming, and I find it very useful when I have to engage in those kinds of exercises. But yes, GitHub Copilot for GitHub. But as always, all these have their own separate licensing costs. Fully recommend it, guy. Give it a absolutely fantastic. They had a demo. I'm not sure if the demo's still on, but it was good for 30 days that you can just leverage it in the GitHub code space on the website. And I was just able to use that to create a complex PowerShell script for file migration to move from an old domain to a new domain. And on the way there, translating ACLs to move it into Azure files. That way, just eliminating a lot of manual labor. And GitHub did hallucinate a little bit, but it still gave me a good starting point and helped me figure out a lot of logic without having to write out the pseudocode myself. So can you see our presentation now, Jackson?
Yep, good to go.
Fantastic. So Copilot in PowerPoint is another option for you. And I liked what Copilot in PowerPoint does. Out of all of the Copilots so far, this is the one that actually will give stock photos and create really nice looking presentations. You can just give it a prompt, or as even the bullet point says, and I mentioned earlier, you can feed it a Word document that exists in SharePoint Online, and it will create a presentation around that. So Jackson, to your point earlier, if you wanted an executive summary, you could have PowerPoint's Copilot pointed at a long document or a set of documents, and it will create a cohesive visual PowerPoint presentation you can use. For an example, you can just feed it even just random data or just ask for random things. I one time asked Copilot in PowerPoint, create a PowerPoint presentation about a dog in Chicago eating a Chicago style hot dog. So it gave me 12 slides of different bullet points. It gave me a history of the hot dog, history of the different types of hot dogs from Chicago, New York style, and others. And it was just a fun little exercise. But on just a simple prompt, it took about 30 seconds to a minute for it to generate. But once it did, it gave me stock photos that were contextually relevant and some good information that I didn't even have to go out and look for. But again, one of the cool things is you can also have the Copilot in PowerPoint point to a template PowerPoint. So if your marketing team, like Davenport Group, has a PowerPoint template to use, that every PowerPoint needs to follow those same colors and layout, you can say, create a presentation from this template based on this Word document. And it will, once again, create what you need right off of a template that's been predefined by your organization. Any questions around?
Yeah. Can you have it use photos from, say, your marketing team or something from your SharePoint repository? Or will it only do stock photos when it creates?
For now, it's stock photos. I haven't been able to get it to point it at a directory in SharePoint. I'm sure that's on the roadmap because a lot of people have been requesting a lot of different features, but as far as I'm aware, it doesn't yet do that. And if it does, they added it since last time I tried it.
What about if you tag some photos and tell it to specifically go to those tags?
I haven't tried that. I'll be honest, I haven't tried that yet. For now, I know it just does a lot more of just stock photos than individual, except if you have the photos already embedded in your documents that you're feeding into it, like the template or a Word document for content. So you might be able to get around it by just saying, hey, then embed it in a Word doc and have it pull some of those images to work with. Yes, Tony.
So I know you've got bulleted here about a Word document, and you maybe said it before, Kevin, that PowerPoint can pull from Word. Is it only Word, or could you do from Excel information also?
It can pull from Word, and I believe it actually can pull from Excel oh my gosh, Excel spreadsheets, falling over my own words here. It can pull data for that as well, but it'll be not as cohesive a pull as it does from Word. The integration there is still being built out.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And Kevin, question in the chat from Anthony. It looks like a clarifying question. So this is, it reads, so this is like a smarter version of the native designer in PowerPoint from the template slide.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't leveraging Designer to make all this happen, instead of reinventing things whole cloth. But that's pretty much right for the money, Anthony.
Perfect. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Again, these are great questions, great conversations, guys.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Keep on sending them in if you have them.
All right. So the next thing is, and what I prefer, my favorite Copilot is Copilot in Teams. Copilot in Teams can do a lot of productivity stuff for me, things that I use throughout the day, every single day. And and that is having Copilot analyze a meeting and ongoing transcripts to understand what's been talked about, any questions, action items, things like that. It has the capability of just giving you chat summaries, like we talked about from Outlook or even Word. You can ask the in Teams, you have a little Copilot button at the top above where you have your chat. There'll be Copilot button there, or sorry, you'll have. I think just pull it up myself so I can rather than just talking about it. Yeah, so at the top of your chat, you'll have a Copilot banner that you can open up and then just ask questions in natural language, and have it tell you what you missed in the last 24 hours, or you can have Copilot open up in a specific chat or a Teams channel and then have it summarize what was just discussed in the last 30 minutes while you were away, or you can ask if you were mentioned anywhere and be able to get information around that, so that way you don't miss anything. It has the ability to that same one, that chat that I was talking about, it will access all of the Microsoft 365 or Microsoft Graph data. So from there is where you can use Copilot Studio to deploy specific chatbots through from Microsoft, from your chatbot, from your Copilot Studio to your organization. You can have them tagged to different security groups or users and say, okay, here's the HR Copilot, and it has access to all the HR information that is secured on SharePoint, so that our HR professionals can just ask questions and get answers. Same goes for finance, accounting, IT, management, sales, you name it, you can create it, and you can you can let Copilot Studio run free and say, here is your data set, and then you can give whatever answers you want, or you can get very granular and say, if someone asks this question or related to any of these keywords, these are the only things you can give answers on. So you can get pretty specific, and Copilot in Teams is a great integration into being able to access that data through Microsoft Graph. One of the other things Copilot in Teams has access to is Whiteboard. I don't use the Whiteboard too much, but when I have, it's been pretty useful in Teams. And you can have Copilot in the Whiteboard section summarize what's already on the whiteboard. You can have it give you some basic skeletal framework of, hey, I actually asked when I was preparing some of my notes for this webinar, under the Whiteboard Copilot, what can I talk about when presenting Copilot for 365? And it gave me 8 or 9 different points to talk about and structured them for me so that I'd have something to start with. I didn't end up using it, but it was just a nice little exercise of seeing what we can do. I've used Copilot now in all the different apps for generating a lot of content. It's a good starting point for me. It saves me a lot of time to get started. And just, I don't know, some people have the same problem as I do. I know I have it all the time. Getting over that initial hump of getting started. You know, I don't know how to even write the first sentence of this document. How do I get there? Copilot is really, really good at that. If you can just give it a few key phrases and say what your intent is, it'll get you past that initial problem or that initial roadblock in your mind. So one of the things, we have a demo of Copilot in Teams that we're going to take a look at here. And in fact, it is a demo of this very meeting. So I've been running Copilot for the Teams meeting, this webinar, and I'm going to actually share my Teams meeting, and we're going to have Copilot tell us some information about what we've been talking about right now. Stop sharing there. And change the share window.
And Kevin, right before we kind of showcase that technology, Tim has a question in the chat here. What information from the AI generation is saved by Microsoft and shared with others? Any security concerns that we've seen?
Let me read that so I can ingest that properly. No security concerns. So all the data in your Microsoft tenant is protected by Microsoft's data governance and security agreements and contracts, and they have very rugged enterprise level contracts written out that when you sign up for Microsoft 365 or you start using Copilot and you acknowledge the terms and conditions, part of that is you are being protected by their right to privacy for your demo, for your data in your tenant. And then I think I see another one. Let me ask I'm going to read this last one from Jason. Does the Copilot Teams meeting summary and recap of what's missed when attending a meeting late work if your organization hosts a meeting? It does not. Copilot has to be run. You have to have the ability to run Copilot. And the only way to, so far from what I've been able to see, Microsoft has only restricted that to the person hosting the meeting or the organization hosting the meeting. Without that, you don't have access. But if you do, it's great. And we'll show this here in a second. But Jeffrey Johnson, what's your question?
You triggered a thought about data and what access it has. So whenever you're asking questions, does it look up like through Word documents and stuff from that user's perspective and only has access to the files that that person has to respond to? Or will it look at all the documents in the whole organization and spit out a response based on that?
Fantastic question. I'm glad you asked this question because we were going to talk about it a little bit later. It is only done in the context of that user. So whatever that user has access to, Copilot for that user has access to. If your CEO has God level admin access to everything, he'll be able to see everything in the tenant. But if you have a user that's a new intern for finance that gets their permissions set incorrectly, and suddenly they're given access to sales data for some reason, they will have access to it because their user was granted access to it. So one of the things we're going to kind of touch on, but I'll just touch on now, is data governance is very, very important when implementing Copilot inside your organization. If your user has access to it and you don't know he has access to it, he or she has access to it, they still have access to it. So somebody could just as a test ask Copilot, show me all the salaries for the organization. And if your data governance isn't tight, your data security isn't there, that user will get access to it if they have access to that document either through inherited permissions or say somebody shared a link from SharePoint Online and accidentally toggle it as everyone has read access, even if it's not edit, then everybody in the tenant or even the whole world from a B2B collaboration perspective would be able to read that data as long as they have access to that link. And Copilot, being inside the tenant, would have access to that data. So as data governance is very key in regards to enabling Copilot. I think I saw another good question, Jeffrey. Thank you.
Yeah, Patrick had his hand up. Did that question get answered, Patrick?
Yeah, you touched on exactly what I was getting ready to say is data governance. So you said pretty much exactly what I was going to suggest.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that I think Jackson's going to touch on towards, and probably in just about a minute, once I actually get past showing this Teams Copilot demo, is what Davenport and my team will help you do is analyze your tenant and check data governance, data security, look for any issues that might be present in your tenant that you're unaware of, and work with you and your security teams to create data sensitivity labels, create data loss prevention policies, and do a lot of that foundational work before you would implement Copilot. And we would be able to be glad to help you with that. Any other questions before I just do this Teams Copilot?
Looking good from the chat.
Okay, so up here, you can see my window here. We have Copilot. Click this button. So we've had this recording has been, or this webinar has been transcribed, and right now, what we have, I mean, you can see even before we started, we had started this webinar and we were just doing some pre-checks to make sure things were working, and it captured that because it was when we had started the recording. But I'm asking it to recap the meeting so far, and it's going to probably talk, it might even include this, but the Copilot is contextually aware enough that it's probably going to recognize that this is prep work, and it might even have a small bullet point about it, but it won't really talk about it. So if we come down here, we can see just how that generated really fast. It's constantly ingesting the transcription data. One of the things that I love, I'm not sure if it's Teams as a Copilot license for Teams, but is this. I think it's actually available for anybody who's using Teams or the new Teams app, but you can turn on live captions. And man, oh man, do I love this capability. If you're not using it, I suggest you turn it on. I think we're all fallible in terms of having ourselves distracted for a moment and then not realizing what was just said. It's super easy just to go back. It keeps just a few last maybe 30 seconds of what was being talked about and being transcribed, so you can see if you missed something. Really, really love that feature. Use that all the time. Because sometimes it's, for me personally, it's easier to read something than it is to hear something for me to understand how best to formulate a response. But over here on the right, we see the Copilot summary saying this is a meeting about Copilot and Outlook. It's talking about the demos for Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, Copilot and Teams. We talked about data governance, which we just talked about, and it was able to generate that nearly in real time. It even gives us the option of doing list action items. So we're going to see what action items comes up. It didn't work, Jackson.
Oh boy.
That thing where we asked for somebody to schedule a meeting, it's in general, if there have been well-defined, verbally expressed action items for a person, a meeting attendant to perform, it will show up here as action items. Whenever I'm running this for client sessions, I use it all the time so that we can have a recording of what happened. We can have the transcript and we can search the content of what was going on. So we could simply even ask something simple like, how many times was the word Copilot used? And it will be able to generate a word count based on the transcript. How many times I've said this word? Apparently only 38 times, which I feel seems low. I feel like I've said that word many more times. But again, this is Copilot in Teams. When you're at the end of a meeting that you're running Copilot on, it'll actually give you AI meeting notes, even if you didn't ask it to generate them live during the meeting, and it'll give you notes and it'll give you action items and next steps. And it'll even suggest if you want to schedule a new meeting based on the content and context of the meeting. So let's stop sharing that. And go back to our presentation.
And Kevin, we have a question in the chat here from Stephen. Is there a way to block certain content so that even if someone has access to it, they still can't pull it into Copilot?
Yes, there is. I know I haven't played around with it, but I know it is a capability, but it requires doing some excess work in Microsoft Purview. All right, Jackson, can we see the presentation again?
Yep, we're good to go.
Okay. Any other questions for me? This is I'm about to turn this back over to Jackson. Any other technical or usability questions for me around this?
Doesn't look like it. Oh,
okay.
Matt?
No, I'm all set. I'm having issues with my headphones. Sorry.
It happens to the best of us. All right, Jackson, I'm gonna kick this over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for running through all those demos. I know if I had this tool, and thankfully Davenport Group is making that investment to get Copilot for the end users. So certainly is going to be a great tool when we have full access. But wanted to kind of wrap this up, right? How do we start the AI journey from an organizational perspective? First and foremost, the most important piece, as you saw with that data governance question and kind of response from Kevin, engage Davenport Group early and often, right? Connect with your account executive, make sure that you're having these discussions of what is the possibility of AI, whether it's Copilot, Gen AI, et cetera. What can we do in our environment and how it's set up, right? Have that baseline conversation so you know going in what you can actually accomplish and if it's possible. Go ahead to the next one there, Kevin. Once you've connected with Davenport Group, what we'll do is onboard you to our CSP. As a principal partner of Microsoft, we're a cloud solution provider. So we're able to offer a self-service portal where you can generate the reports, your order history, subscriptions, even direct a self-service, right? If you hire a new person and it was kind of out of the blue, like, oh, we hired them yesterday and we needed everything set up today, you can go self-service and add a E3 or E5 license into that portal and activate it nearly right away. So super simple, super easy. But in the next slide here, implementing Copilot, right? How do we get this software added on to the O365 licensing, right? With Davenport Group, through the conversations of what are you trying to accomplish? Let's get the data governance in place and ready to go. Our engineers can take it from the end to end, from the start to finish, from just the conception of will this work to, oh my gosh, we have implemented it. So the certified Davenport Group engineers that is Kevin and his team are well versed in this, right? They've seen it, they've used it, they've had a high touch point, which gives an advantage to you as the end user, right? As an IT admin, director, CIO, you're being asked to manage this. So any training or platform knowledge coming from someone that's used it and experienced it from the end to end, from scoping it all the way to installation, is a massively beneficial situation. Kevin, do you want to touch any more on data governance? I think we wrapped that up pretty well.
Yeah, I think we probably touched on it enough. If anybody does have more in-depth questions, we can always have a direct one-on-one meeting with your account executive and a member of my team to kind of go over more of the details.
Perfect. And then the final step, right after you implement Copilot, we're at the stage where you can pop open Teams and say, hey, give me the action items. What then, right? Obviously, you'll be using that platform and the capabilities to help you kind of streamline some of those manual processes. But let Davenport Group help you stay on top of what's new in the AI world, right? AI is very, very beginning, right? I was looking up some of that, Microsoft Team when it was released. Copilot's only less than a year old, right, for actual production data. So new things are continuing to roll out and improve, and new capabilities are coming. So let us keep you involved, right? Let us know the feedback on this is really working and this really isn't, and help us understand what you need from us. And then, as I mentioned, self-manage those Copilot licenses from the My Cloud portal. Being able to kind of go in and click on, click off on who needs it, how long they need it, that kind of thing. Again, just makes it a very streamlined process. Next slide, please, Kevin. So wrapping it all up, right? 5 minutes left in the meeting. How do we get AI in our environment? If it's a project, if it's an initiative, it's a thought, right? Engage your Davenport Group team. Let's have a conversation about what you want to accomplish, whether it's just implementing for Teams and PowerPoint, or if you wanted, as we discussed with some of the coding, right? Copilot for GitHub. Is it going to go that granular? Maybe a chatbot, right? There's so many different options inside of the Copilot arena itself that we really want to have that conversation and set you up for success. We'll set you up in the My Cloud portal, right? That's step number 2. Get you involved in the self-service portal, make sure that you have access to it and that you can streamline, right? The whole idea of AI is to make things more efficient and easier, and that's exactly what My Cloud portal does. Now, for the Microsoft Copilot, one of the conversations I've had is we don't want to implement this for everyone, right? It's not being used by everyone, and that's totally okay. One of my big recommendations, and I've seen a lot of customers implement it and have success, is implement it for your executive team, right? Show them the value, right? $30 a month for 5 executive leaders, and show them the value of, hey, this is $150 for you 5. What could we get done with our whole team having this capability? So implement it small, get a test group together, get comfortable with the platform, and then you can expand from there. So really Copilot as an ever-growing situation, ever-growing software is a really good place to start small and then grow. Then finally, as I was mentioning earlier about the certified engineers here at Davenport Group, we have a plethora of Microsoft services. So while it might not be Copilot on the horizon for you with the next project or anything like that, if you have anything in the Microsoft portfolio, whether it be licensing, Azure Stack HCI, Storage Spaces Direct, anything in the on-prem exchange to O365 migrations, we can help you with that. So either way, the big ask here is just engage your Davenport Group team. I know a lot of you are in a good cadence. So any projects that come up, let us help you get to where you need to go and look like a rock star in the process. You can go ahead into the next slide, Kevin.
Before we move on, Jackson, something I just want to bring up.
Yeah.
Currently, Copilot 365 is only available for commercial tenant commercial tenants in Microsoft 365. It is not yet available for GCC low, high, or even DoD. That is on the way. The Copilot Compose is supposed to this month drop for GCC low tenants for Outlook and Word, but that is the only feature sets that's even on the roadmap for deployment in the near future. However, if you are interested in setting up Copilot for 365 and being ready for when it's available for GCC, the data governance bit is key. I don't really recommend turning on Copilot across the tenant and giving out licenses until you feel safe with the user data and your corporate data is locked away or at least well secured and governed properly. So we can help you get that foundation set brick by brick so you're ready for when Copilot for 365 comes out for GCC and any of the other higher level tenants.
That's a great call out, Kevin. Any last questions before we get into the kind of thank you from Davenport Group? Does not look like anything's popping through. So go ahead here, Kevin, to the next slide, please. So let's connect, right? The theme of my day. Talk to Davenport Group, engage Davenport Group, talk to us. Let's get you where you need to go. So if you're interested in connecting with Davenport Group to discuss the Copilot demos that you saw today, how to implement it, get it going in your organization, the My Cloud portal for any other Microsoft licensing, or even Dell Technology Solutions for maybe a Gen AI project, or just a data center in general. We want to thank you for your time, right? To be entered in for a chance to win a Tidbit Gen 2, and I looked these things up, they are sweet. If you think of like the Alexa with the screen, or even a Google Nest Hub with the screen, it's basically that, but in this cool retro view, right? Like you can have different sports scores and sunrise, sunset, like you see on the picture here. Look it up. It's a phenomenal piece of equipment. I might buy one for myself after this webinar. But long story short, let's connect. You'll be entered in to win a Tidbit Gen 2 for talking to us. And then the thank you for just joining the webinar, right? I don't want to miss this part. Either Zeal sunglasses or a Grubhub credit. I believe it's $50 for a credit or a pair of sunglasses, like you see here on the screen here. What you'll need to do to claim this is email marketing at Davenport Group with productivity, and you'll have to specify which one you want, whether it's Grubhub or the Zeal sunglasses. So productivity, and then your choice of what you want to receive. I do have a couple customers on here, and I know a few customers across the way that are bound to a gift policy. So if you're not able to accept gifts, totally fine. We're in a position where we want to donate that $50 incentive to a charity. So if that's the case where you're not allowed to accept gifts, go ahead and email marketing productivity and say, I want to donate this to a local charity. I will make sure to get that arranged and in. So with that being said, if you have any other questions, please reach out to your Davenport account executives. They'll be following up here within the next week or so on this webinar, just to get some feedback and really dive into, is this an option for your organization? But if we don't talk to you before next week, have a great weekend, enjoy your day, and thank you so much for joining The Future is Bright with AI webinar.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.